Welcome to this week's episode of Canadian Mortgage Hangout TV. Thanks for joining us once again. I am happy to report that the Rob Campbell and our other colleague Scott Dawson are returning from Vegas at the moment, so won't be able to join us this week. And I'm not happy because they're not here. I'm just happy for them because they were awarded with a social media. What was it called, Jackson?
It was called the Social Media Leadership Award.
Yes, the Social Media Leadership Award at the Verico National Conference down in Vegas. So congratulations to our buddies for that, and we'll miss them on the show. However, we are joined this week by a very special guest. His name is Eric Petersen. He's a local Edmonton financial planner, certified financial planner. Is that correct, Eric? Stop ringing.
Not certified, but financial planner, yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Eric, the reason why, of course, as always, I'm joined by Jackson Middleton, but the reason I wanted to jump right in and talk with you, Eric, was there was some back and forth today on Twitter regarding the upcoming Canadian anti-spam legislation, otherwise known as CASL. CASL, and of course you can learn more about that at that hashtag. I was doing some research myself before the show. You were just at a seminar, were you, Eric? And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Miller Thompson put it on this morning. Essentially it was summarizing the new anti-spam law are no longer up for debate. They're in place. We have due dates now impending that are going to bring the enforcement starting this summer and then again in 2017 when all of the final preparations need to be out of the way. But yeah, it was quite a revealing moment. One of the points he made was that this has been flying completely under the radar. There's been no real news press releases. There's been no real they've never ever asked for collaboration on this. It's kind of just popped up all of a sudden as here you have it, this is the way it is.
Naturally, I think, and when it flies under the radar, you have to wonder why. It begs the question: what is it that they don't want us to know, or they don't want either businesses to know or consumers? Would you say that this is legislation, Eric? And maybe let's make this point early on. None of us are lawyers, so. This is not an advice. This is not a program designed to really tell you what to do about this or how to comply with this legislation. Frankly, I think it's safe to say all three of us are learning about this legislation. Not necessarily for the first time, but we're learning about it now because we got a month really before the deadline. I believe it goes into effect July 1st. So we want to know what the implications are to our businesses. We all market to our customers. Eric, I presume you send emails to your clients?
Yeah, you got to email these days. It seems like there isn't much more of a relevant form of communication next to talking in person or on the phone.
Right. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this doesn't exclusively apply to email communication, does it?
No, that was one of the points he made, that it includes every kind of message. The term they use is an electronic message. So you send a message to someone on Facebook, on Twitter, even an open message. It seems that they have requirements that you have to live up. You can't even fit into 140 characters. You're supposed to include your email address, your phone number, unsubscribe details. And so he said that right now nobody knows where this is going to go, that they have such a far-reaching and heavy-handed circle of influence that they can draw from that he's not sure how people can function in some cases when it comes to social media in particular. So
what you're saying is if we send a commercial, and how do they define it? There was a definition here I wanted to dig up. It had something to do with a commercial electronic, CEM, right? Commercial electronic message. Is that the correct term?
That's right. That's right. And their definition was really quite vague because he says that the legislation doesn't really define much. But yeah, anything they call a commercial electronic message. And it could be any content, I'm just reading from his document here, any content that could be considered commercial, promotional, or marketing, anything that has a signature block referring to your organization, link to any website is likely a commercial. He was trying to interpret it. He said that obviously if it got in front of a judge, it could go any direction, but he can tell it's quite open. And he says it doesn't even have to have the intention of making a profit to be considered a commercial message. A lot of other things in the past have been able to be exempt. If what they're soliciting doesn't have any potential for profit, you were okay. But now they kind of are that as well. So if you're trying to discuss anything with any of that in your message, it now constitutes a commercial electronic message.
Wow. Okay, so basically we're going back to smoke signals and phone calls. A lot of breakfast. I think based on this, a lot of breakfast networking clubs are really going to be booming. After you got to think that people are going to have to go back to the old ways.
And the thing that really puzzles me, Gord, is that my mailbox can be stuffed full of flyers from companies and do bad things. Now I can't send an electronic message or even receive one without you thinking, why? Maybe I should be this to me. It's kind of a backward system, it seems.
Jackson, I want to let you jump in here and just tell people, maybe give people the coordinates if they want to engage with us on this topic, because I think it's, Eric's got this fresh in his mind and is in a related industry to ours. So tell people how they can ask Eric or ask questions on Twitter, if you could. And
well, here we go. Well, if you're watching this and you want to join and you want to ask a question, hit us on the hashtag CMHTV, and I hope that's not a commercial solicitation by any means. Oh, wait, I've got a month. I kind of was doing a bit of the research on this in the social media side, and in one article that I was looking at, I'm not sure, and again, maybe, Eric, you could give me some more clarification on this, but it's not necessarily talking about a broadcasting of a message or a commercial message. It's more talking about the targeting of an individual with a commercial message. So is it necessarily saying, if I put on my Twitter feed, hey, we've got this and I'm soliciting a mortgage rate, or is it mentioning somebody or direct messaging somebody or sending them a message on Facebook that is personalized for them? Is there any differentiation there? Because I'm reading this one article and it's not just prohibiting person from sending without permission, but targeting anyone causing or permitting a CEM to be sent. So is it the actual targeting of an individual, or is it the actual entire broadcasting online? Is there differentiation there?
That's a great question. Like hypothetically, and I'm sure we could get into all kinds of hypotheticals, but couldn't you not target somebody with a commercial message and then have it retweeted or forwarded or shared by somebody else without your consent to a third party, essentially them almost targeting it for you, and then fall under that causing someone to have there's a lot of responsibility as a third party, it seems. Eric.
Yeah, he touched on that a little bit today, but again was reluctant to get in depth in it. He said that that's the problem with the legislation, is it doesn't define that. So really, are we? He asked the question, like the border guards, where they can quarantine you for any reason because they feel it's a position of national security. Well, he says really, if they decide to point their finger at you. There's no real specific definition yet, and until some court cases go through, because that's the other side of this. There's two ways you can get stung by this. One is you can have the CRTC chase you down for someone complaining about you, and then there's the fines that come with that. Or you can also be sued privately for this as well. So This legislation allows for both panels, and not necessarily one needs to be included with the other.
Did they talk at all about the burden of proof, Eric, on somebody who gets caught under this legislation, whether purposely or inadvertently having maybe fallen under it, and what we could expect in terms of an ability to defend ourselves?
Yeah, he did. he said what needs to happen is there needs to be an opt-in process. There needs to be documentation, and he even made he said the phrase that you need to have forensic evidence to be able to prove. So if you have if say someone gives you oral consent, you have to have a record of that. So you have to have the audio file saved somewhere on your computer for each one that you have, or you have to have paper consent or some form of electronic consent. But he said it needs to be forensically, needs to have some sort of a check and balance system. I'm not too sure. I'm not an IT mastermind, but it seems to me that there's going to be a lot of effort needed to put in to make these things, to make your evidence something you've got that's provable.
That's it seems like one more the burden of proof becoming a compliance burden that we're sort of used to this, I suppose, in the financial services industry. I know in your business, Eric, there's a fairly substantial compliance burden, and it doesn't seem to be getting easier, does it?
No.
And likewise in ours, new rule changes all the time, constant adjustments from federal, provincial levels, even membership organizations, that kind of thing. And then now this is something that every business, this is not just something that financial services businesses need to comply with, but any business, really. You could be the local hot dog vendor, and if you have an email list that you maintain of your clients who want to know about the hot dog of the week, you're going to have to comply with this. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. If it's any size of business, from something you do as a hobby once a month to an enterprise organization, you need to have everything in place. You need to have all of that compliance recorded, and if confronted by the CRTC, you need to be able to show all of that information, which, again, for large corporations, I can see putting an IT system in place probably will have a cost to it, but it'll be far more expensive to a guy who works for himself or a small business, which Canada is mostly made up of.
One thing that I think would be interesting, and Jackson, I mean, you must be sweating right now because you're in charge of the marketing and online promotion and things like that for our firm. This is something we're obviously going to have to really get on top of. I think our industry associations, CAMP and AMBA, have done a good job of informing us that this was coming. But there's so much out there. Does this kill direct electronic communication with our clients, or do we just have to go from this opt-out, implied consent kind of mentality that we've had in the past? For example, when I send an email newsletter we use iContact. It's a good piece of software. Others use MailChimp or Industry Mailout, or there's 100 different other services you can use to send out email communication to your clients. These are all clients these are all people we've done business with in the past, and I think that was the standard, right? You're communicating with people who you've done business with in the past. There's been some previous communication, some implied consent. Maybe we had, and then we give them the opportunity to unsubscribe or opt out at any time, and then we honor that, right? That's the old way of thinking. We can't think that way anymore, Eric. It has to be, based on what you're telling us, it has to be not implied, but really specific, trackable, verifiable, opt-in. That's the mentality, hey?
And I'm gonna jump in because sorry, Eric. I think I think what CASL's trying to establish is already good marketing practices. You don't want to be communicating with somebody who doesn't want your communication. To me, Seth Godin and the concept of permission marketing has been around. Don't communicate with somebody who hasn't given you their permission. I think what I'm a little afraid of is, the kind of the big brother thing. I mean, for me, these are already principles that our organization is living by. It's just, okay, do we have the appropriate documentation in place to make sure that people have expressed the actual opt-in, and what that looks like on social media is what's irking me, because, okay, if I've got a Twitter account, I broadcast on Twitter, you choose to follow my Twitter account, is that opt-in? like on the social media side, on Facebook. I mean, if I'm just going out and spamming people on Facebook, yeah, slap my hands. It's just bad marketing. But I mean, the what they define as opt-in with email is very simple. You have to, obviously there's something we'll put up there and people will opt in, but on social media it becomes considerably more difficult.
Well, let me ask you this. How does this affect paid social media advertising? Facebook has advertising you can buy. Twitter does, I guess. I don't think we've ever done anything on that. Presumably, clicking on the advertisement would be considered. You're not really opting in because you've seen the initial message, whatever that initial message is, the little blurb that marketers use to get your attention. Is that transmitting a commercial electronic message, Eric? Did they touch on that at all in the seminar?
Well, they didn't touch on advertising, but they did say if someone connected to you, you were able to reply to them. That was implied consent, at least for the initial response. One thing they did say, so I mean, say for example, you had something on your site and they said, I want to sign up for some kind of information you've got, but maybe your newsletter is separate. They said that you're not allowed to nest that into a overall overarching, like those pages where they're 8 pages long, you scroll to the bottom and you hit I accept. Yeah. You're not allowed to have that. This does not qualify if it's in that. It has to be a separate one after that. So you're going to have to click 2 now every time you want to sign up for a website or something like that. So they said it expressly has to be its own individual opt-in, saying I opt in to receive emails from so and so. Now there was one other thing you'd mentioned. I can't remember the detail, but there was one this lawyer brought up today, and he said in China in 2005 they brought in their anti-spam legislation, and it was the Kilted Broker had mentioned the good marketing practices. Well, in 2005, China said, you know what, spam now is going to be very, very.
They probably hang you by the toenails in China for this, right? Like
it's the death penalty. And what he made the point that was really interesting was that since then, China's spam has increased. It's multiplied since that. So punishment, we know punishment doesn't change anything. And so good marketing practice seems like a far better approach to solve this problem than to bring in punishments that really don't seem to listen anyways. Our downside in all of this is that this only affects Canadian businesses. If a U.S. company decides to spam Canadians, we can't do anything about that. So really,
I'm glad you mentioned that. That really,
the majority of spam is coming from outside.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That really is the irony in all of this. Is I would suspect if I was looking at my inbox, the spam I get is not from Canadian businesses. It's not what I consider spam. No, some are commercial messages. They're things I've opted into. They're things, newsletters I've requested, or I've checked the box somewhere that says, yeah, I want to receive that. And you know what? It's really easy to unsubscribe. I can't think of the last time I got spammed by a Canadian or really even an American company that I couldn't deal with. In fact, and then you could even say the private market the marketplace has already come up with solutions to deal with this. We have spam folders. Everybody has some sort of form of automated spam filtering. You can go a step further and use a service called like Unroll.me, which allows you to consolidate all of your commercial subscription emails into sort of one digest on a daily basis, and they'll handle the unsubscription process for you if you choose to unsubscribe. Like, it seems like the private market's already dealt with this. Is this just a case of government being 3 years too late and way too heavy-handed, or is this, from your perspective, and I'll open the question up to everybody, Jackson, Eric, yourself, and anybody watching along on Twitter, is this a situation where the protection of the consumer is so paramount and that they've truly been so abused for so long that this legislation is necessary, or is it too much too late?
I really do think that it's more of a political move than an actual safety move, and the numbers really say it. The largest spam producer in the world is the U.S. They produce 20% of the spam, which surprised me. I would have thought it would have come from Nigeria or something like that. China was the second at 9%. Canada is a fraction of a percent. And so really, like, we're not producing significant amounts of spam. The problem isn't coming from us. And so for them to come in, and the government kind of said that we waited, we really wanted to make sure we did this right, we've watched everyone else's, and this is what we feel. But I mean, they've come to build a house with an 8-pound sledgehammer, and I'm not sure that they brought the right tools to the party.
Jackson, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is heavy-handed. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, none of us like to get spam, but the truth is I don't see that this is going to make any difference. I think it's just going to allow CRTC to go on a witch hunt. It's going to allow, I mean, what implications are there when one business fraudulently claims that another business is communicating with them to, like we've had people that have given us rotten testimonials, and you find out that it's a broker 2 doors down. I mean, that stuff has happened. What happens when somebody says, hey, these guys communicated with me, and, like there's all of the things that can happen, the unintended consequences of this, and I mean, how much money do we have to pay people to enforce this? Where do the fees go when they're collected? I mean, there's so many things that, I don't know, if we're a fraction of a percent of the world's spam and we're coming down with some of the heavier laws, I mean, to me it just doesn't make sense. And as a marketer, yeah, I just go back to, it's not good practice anyways. How many people have really sent, well, actually, my buddy works for the RCMP, and his entire job is to follow up on people that have sent money to the Nigerian princes. So obviously it works. I mean, yeah, maybe there's more of a fraud protection thing there, and that's what they're going after, and this is just an unintended consequence that it's affecting all of us Canadian businesses. But if it doesn't affect international, and it's only affecting us, it doesn't make sense to me.
I suppose one of the things that this is probably at its root targeted at professional spammers. It's probably targeted at spam bots, viruses, phishing schemes, things like that are really, like you said, Jackson, where maybe there's an element of fraud to it, where it's not a legitimate commercial message at all to begin with, or it's an abusive form of communication. You got to think, like, this has got to, how enforceable is this? How enforceable is it? And is it even, is not from a rule standpoint, but from a time and resources standpoint, this is the potential to just cost an obscene amount of money and time. It's a great make work project, I suppose, if they want to hire a bunch of email or text message police. But I guess, the lowest hanging fruit's got to be the professional spammers and the people who are, really abusing the system. Wouldn't you say, Eric?
Well, yeah, I would agree with you, although I'm just not sure how many of them actually exist in Canada. Us being a fraction of a percentage, other than people who have bad marketing practice, really, I'm going to guess we don't have many here. The problem with this is that this really gets enacted when someone complains. And so if someone complains about an email you sent, and again, really it comes down to the burden of proof, do we have everything in place to defend ourselves? I don't know. That's going to be the big question. There are a few exemptions on the scammers were mentioned. And again, going to mention, a Nigerian scammer has to send 12 million emails to get one person to reply genuinely and honestly believing them. And they 39 million a year. There's a lot of them out there. But again, we look at the source. Where is the spam coming from? I'm just not convinced that really bringing these laws into our country is going to change any of it.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. So there are some best practices, and I would say for brokers watching this show, or anybody in the financial services industry, we have the benefit of having membership organizations we belong to who help us to sort of navigate through some of this legislation and these changes that affect our businesses. So I would encourage any mortgage brokers out there to check with your provincial association. I know AMBA has a piece on this. I know CAMP, or National Association, does have something right on their website. It's a PDF you can download. I'll just highlight really quickly. It's got a little summary of things you should be doing right now. 1, appoint a person to oversee CASL compliance. Jackson, congratulations. Number 2, assess how CASL applies to your organization's operations and marketing activities. So determine how you obtain consent. And this is going to be, because this is a challenge not just for new people we start to interact with, somebody new visiting the website who requests information, we have to have their explicit consent to communicate back with them. But also our existing clients, our existing database of clients. We've probably, if you're watching your inbox, you might already have received some emails like I have over the past few days saying, hey, we've been sending emails in the past. We now need, due to this anti-spam legislation, we now need your express consent to continue doing so. It'll be really interesting to see how much that thins out our email lists. I'm really curious to know, because I know every time I send an email newsletter, we're adding all of our new clients on a monthly basis, but when we send out our email newsletter, we get 2 or 3 unsubscribes sort of every time, and this is people who probably feel like maybe the newsletter isn't delivering the value they want, or they get that information from our blog instead, or our Twitter feed now, or our Facebook page, or whatever. But, when you're looking at lists of a certain size, you got to expect some of that. Going forward now, this explicit consent thing, I mean, it could shave that list right down to the stump. It would be interesting to see. So.
And then again, I ask, is that necessarily a bad thing? Because now you have clearly identified people who have opted in to receive your message. Yes, I think it's, yes, we want the opportunity to market to those, and, every time we send out an email newsletter, we do get some clients saying, hey, good to hear from you. Let's do some business. But those are probably the people that would opt into our emails anyway. So I'm not opposed to this. I think it's good marketing practice. We only want to communicate with people that want to hear from us. So, yeah, I mean, here's a pet peeve of mine on LinkedIn. You connect on LinkedIn, and then if you're one of these people that connects on LinkedIn and then starts sending messages out to people, like they're clearly spam, that's spam. That's crap. Don't send me an unsolicited message in your LinkedIn. I've got a realtor who posts her videos not on her feed, but on my timeline. She's got a video of her sitting in an office talking with her clients, and she posts it on my timeline. I delete and report for spam. Delete, report for spam. Because that's exactly what it is. I've now had to unfriend her, but it's just, these are the bad practices that people look at you and they think you're a tool bag. So maybe this will actually help people because, man, there might be some people that need their hands slapped. Anyways, going to the Twitter, Hallie from Fizgard says that they currently have an unsubscribe on all their emails, but we'll be sending a consent request to our entire database, and our current compliance officer will take on CASL, and so they've appointed somebody, so that's awesome.
Hallie's got a wonderful organization called Fizgard out in BC. They're a large MIC that does great business, and she's well respected in our industry and beyond for her leadership. Hallie, not everybody has a compliance officer, so that's going to be a challenge. I mean, some people are compliance officer, president, CEO, and chief bottle washer. This is one more thing, and there are so many small businesses out there who don't have a lot of resources to deal with this kind of stuff. It just seems overboard to me. But I think it's legislation is a solution seeking a problem to solve more than anything. But that's sort of my take on it, I suppose. Did they talk about it all, Eric, at this seminar you were at about a 3-year opt-in period? I'm just seeing some in some of the research that I've done. There's some sort of 3-year opt-in period or 3-year integration period when it comes to dealing with clients you've already had a business relationship with. Is that familiar?
Yeah, well, they have everything kicks in July 1st, 2014, and then they did have a grace period, and there was a number of different looking for them here. So
Right.
most of it comes into force on July.
I'm sorry. I just there's an article.
And then January 15th. Oh, go ahead.
You go
okay.
ahead. Yeah.
January 15th, 2015. It says in-force date for provisions related to computer programs. So they kind of stage it in. But then in July 1st, 2017 is when everything should be there. That's when people can take private rights of action against you. And that's when implied consent expires. So you must have explicit consent after that point. So they've kind of given you a window till 2017.
Can you repeat that date for us?
July 1st, 2017.
That's when implied consent goes away, and you need to replace that with explicit opt-in consent.
That's right. And technically it starts July 1st this year, but I imagine there'll be a grace period, but just like all of the other government organizations, if you cross them now, you'll probably be on their radar. So the sooner you're in line with that, the better.
That makes sense. Okay, so the July 1st deadline coming up right now in a month is something you want to have in place definitely for any sort of new communication you're having with people you don't have an existing relationship with. You might as well take the steps now to I suppose, get that direct consent from existing clients. But if you have to do this in stages, you've got a little bit of a grace period to deal with your existing clients. So I think that's reasonable. There's a point. There's a great article. If you search CTV News, there's actually an article where they quote the CRTC. It's called "The Anti-Spam Law Will Be Difficult to Police," the CRTC says. So yeah, no kidding. And it gets into some of the penalties for this, and maybe Eric, you can enlighten us as to what we're not going to face a firing squad like we would in China, which is good. But what were some of the penalties that they discussed in the Miller-Thompson seminar?
Well, it might be more appealing. The monetary penalties for a corporation is up to, well, and the first thing I'll say this, the fines are 100 times higher than for privacy legislation breach. So the fines that come with breach of privacy are a fraction of the fines that come with this, which doesn't make sense to me. Privacy, I think, would be paramount, but regardless,
so if I
monetary penalties for...
If I communicate with you, I'm going to be on the hook for 100 times more than if I sell your social insurance number on the web.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. And so for a corporation, the fines can be as high as $10 million, and for an individual, it can be as high as $1 million. Privacy legislation breaches are $100,000 for corporations and $10,000 for individuals. And so, yeah, like I said, the Chinese firing line might be a more desirable way to be dealt with.
Yeah, maybe you can opt out of the financial penalty and explicitly opt into the firing squad at that point. Wow.
I'd like to take asylum in China, please.
Yeah, exactly. There will be a whole bunch of Edward Snowdens out there who are just joining countries of convenience. Interesting. Wow, yeah. That's a big deterrent, obviously. So it's probably that's like why it's got people talking now. It's just a shame that it's interesting that to me that the penalties are so explicit and yet the rules are sort of vague. That gives the prosecution, the government side of things, a whole lot of latitude, which just doesn't seem fair and kind of a.
Well, one thing that he did mention, Brian, the lawyer who did this presentation, he said that he's already seen seminars on how to personally gain from this, how to get someone to send you an email so you can, you know, when it comes to the part of this whole argument, this legislation, really the sky's the limit. Like, you know, how big can you get sued for something for sending a email to one letter wrong, or you missed an underscore, or you know, there's some pretty heavy ramifications to what I think could be an easy mistake to make. So, like I said, there's already people looking to capitalize on this in a negative way.
Well,
So does this count for politicians?
Get anyone's or take anyone's input on this, but last minute the legislation was changed to exclude politicians explicitly. Politicians, they can talk about whatever they want, they can email all they want, they have a carte blanche pass.
Wait a sec. So this is legislation passed by politicians for all of us that they have explicitly opted out of. Is that what I'm hearing?
That as weird as that sounds, that's exactly what I said.
Okay, so guys, people watching this, please. This is a good opportunity. We should get, actually, you know who would be really good to talk to about this would be Boris Bozic too, Jackson. We should have Boris Bozic back on the show because I'm sure he's having an aneurysm just thinking about this right now. These are people, politicians, that we vote for, that we hire to serve us, who are above the law now when it comes to communication with us. It's so backwards. That's so backwards. Hallie continues to, agree with you, Jackson, on this being a positive, and I agree. From a marketing standpoint, do you want to spray and pray and hit everybody with a message, or do you want to communicate more intimately with people who want your message? That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Although there are different strategies and different ways to approach things from a marketing perspective. It'd be nice to be able to, I guess, decide that for yourself as a business. And suffer the consequences of not doing it well in a marketplace where, if you're communicating with people in a poor way, they have the choice not to buy your service, not to buy your product, not to deal with you, maybe to give you a really nasty review on Google reviews or on Facebook that's going to impact your business. Isn't that how these things typically get sorted out?
Well, yeah, I've always seen our capitalist society as pretty beneficial. Like masses go where the masses are attracted, and like Jackson said, good marketing practice beats good clients, and really they're going to make the choice. I kind of like that free market, mainly from the perspective that we don't have the big offenders here in Canada.
Yeah. Well, we've gone way over time on this today, but it's a really important issue and something that I think every mortgage broker and every financial planner, everybody in the insurance business needs to know about. I did have to resist for a moment, but I'm not going to. I think it's important to point out that our general insurance practice offers something called legal defense insurance. Or legal expense insurance. So I don't have no idea if it covers anti-spam legislation compliance, but maybe it should and maybe it will, and that's something I can definitely put the bug in their ear because I'd probably be the first to sign up for it. So really appreciate your perspective on this today, Eric, and the information you brought to the table for us and for our viewers. And it's always great to have you in the office, but nice to have you on the show for the first time, so thanks.
Thank you very much.
Once again, you can follow Eric Petersen on Twitter at EricPET, and his company, Prosperity Engine, at ProsperityENG. Is that correct?
That's right.
Great. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Eric, and great to see you. And Jax, any final thoughts before we go?
Nope, I like it. Scott Dawson wanted to say hi to everybody, and the Rob Campbell phoned me up this morning and said he was in the weeds. I don't quite know what that means, but I'm sure he would like to say a big hello to everybody as well. So thanks, everyone, for joining us, and I think we're out of here.
We're out of here. Goodbye.
Goodbye.